They charged a 94-year-old man who will never be arrested, never board a plane, and never see the inside of a courtroom. And if you think this is about a crime from 1996, you are looking at the wrong decade entirely. Stay with me, because what happened this week changes how every government in this hemisphere calculates its relationship with Washington. Federal prosecutors in Miami are preparing to announce criminal charges against Raúl Castro, former president of Cuba, former defense minister, brother of Fidel, for ordering the 1996 shootdown of 2 civilian aircraft over international waters. 4 American citizens died. The indictment is expected Wednesday. Raúl Castro is 94 years old. He has not left Cuba in years. He will not be extradited. He will not stand trial. And every single person filing these charges knows that. So before you accept the official framing, ask the one question the headlines are not asking. Why this week? If this story is already making you think differently than you did 60 seconds ago, hit the like button right now, because we are just getting started. February 24, 1996. 2 Cessna aircraft operated by Brothers to the Rescue, a Miami-based humanitarian group that searched for Cuban refugees adrift in the Florida Straits, were intercepted by Cuban MiG-29 fighter jets. According to U.S. investigators and the International Civil Aviation Organization, both planes were in international airspace when they were destroyed. 4 men died: Carlos Costa, Armando Alejandre Jr., Mario de la Peña, Pablo Morales, all American citizens. Declassified intelligence intercepts from that day captured Cuban military communications, referencing authorization from senior leadership. U.S. authorities have long believed Raúl personally gave the order. The families sued in federal court and won a $187 million judgment in 1997. Cuba never paid. The families were eventually compensated through seized Cuban assets, but they never stopped pushing for something money cannot buy: criminal accountability. Now here is where this stops being a legal story and becomes something else entirely. The evidence has existed since 1996. The intelligence intercepts were declassified years ago. The civil judgment was rendered nearly 3 decades back. Every element required for an indictment has been sitting in a file cabinet through 6 presidencies. Clinton did not file. Bush did not file. Obama did not file. Biden did not file. Trump's first term did not file. But this week, the same week the CIA director flew to Havana, the same week Cuba's power grid collapsed again, the same week Cuban officials used the word discussing for the first time in 67 years, the same week generators in Cuban hospitals began counting their remaining fuel in hours. This week, the Justice Department files charges against the 94-year-old patriarch of the revolution. That timing is not coincidence. In geopolitics, timing is never coincidence. And if you want to understand what Washington is actually doing in Cuba right now, you need to understand what this indictment is truly designed to accomplish, because it is operating on 3 levels at once, and the most powerful one is never mentioned in any press release. The first objective is direct personal pressure on the Castro family network. Alejandro Castro Espín, Raúl's grandson, is believed to control Cuba's intelligence apparatus. He was in the room with CIA Director Ratcliffe in Havana just 3 days ago. He is the bridge between Cuba's civilian government and its military structure. Indicting his grandfather while simultaneously negotiating with him is the geopolitical equivalent of placing a signed arrest warrant on the table, right next to the peace offering. We are talking to you. We are charging your family. Both are true. Choose which reality you want to live in. The second objective is domestic political positioning. Miami's Cuban-American community is the most reliable Republican voting bloc in Florida. Florida is a state where national elections are decided by margins measured in thousands of votes. An indictment of Raúl Castro is the single highest value political action this administration could take in South Florida. It costs nothing diplomatically that has not already been spent. It delivers exactly what that community has demanded for 28 years. And it arrives on schedule, not Justice's schedule, Washington's schedule. The third objective is the one that should concern every government in Latin America. This is the Maduro template, applied again. In 2020, the administration indicted Venezuelan President Maduro on drug trafficking and terrorism charges. He was not arrested, but the indictment froze assets, restricted international travel, complicated diplomacy, and signaled that Washington was willing to treat a sitting head of state as a criminal defendant. Then in January 2026, Maduro was removed in a joint operation with Colombian forces. The indictment had provided the legal architecture for what became, in practice, a regime change operation. Now the same architecture is being built around Cuba. Asset freezes, travel exposure, diplomatic isolation. A signal to every senior Cuban official, not just Raúl, that proximity to this regime now carries personal legal risk. Mexico's foreign minister said it plainly this week. Indicting a former head of state sets a dangerous precedent. She is right. And Washington is doing it anyway, because the precedent is not a side effect. The precedent is the product. Here is the part of this story that exists independently of every strategic calculation, and it deserves its own space because it is the only part that is purely about human beings. 4 men were killed on February 24, 1996. Their families have spent 28 years pursuing not money, not diplomatic leverage, but criminal charges against the man they believe gave the order. Maggie Alejandre Cooley, daughter of Armando Alejandre Jr., has been testifying before Congress, meeting with administrations, and being told repeatedly that the timing was not right since the late 1990s. 28 years of being told, not yet, not now. Diplomatic considerations outweigh legal ones. The case is under review. And now, in the middle of a calculated campaign designed to accelerate Cuba's collapse, the timing is suddenly right. The families did not ask for this. They did not request that their fathers' deaths be filed as foreign policy leverage. They asked for justice, and justice arrived, but it arrived in a strategic uniform. That does not make the justice less real. The men were killed. The order was given. The evidence exists. The families deserve accountability. All of that is true, and it coexists uncomfortably with the equally true fact that 6 administrations had this evidence and chose to wait for the moment of maximum strategic utility. Holding both truths simultaneously is not comfortable, but discomfort is not contradiction. Justice and strategy can share a vehicle. The only question worth asking is which one has its hands on the wheel. There is a doctrine emerging here, clear enough now to name directly. Identify a government Washington wants to pressure. Build a genuine criminal case around real crimes. File the indictment not when the evidence is ready, but when the political moment is optimal. Use the indictment to justify asset seizures, travel restrictions, and diplomatic isolation. And if the strategic window opens, as it did with Maduro, use the indictment as the legal foundation for direct action. The charges are real. That is what makes the tool so precise. You do not need to manufacture crimes. You wait for real ones. You file when they are most useful. Justice deferred is not justice forgotten. It is justice held in reserve, available the moment it becomes strategically indispensable. Look at the full sequence this administration has run on Cuba since January: fuel blockade, banking sanctions, military conglomerate designation, Starlink offer designed to be refused, Failed state language from official briefings, Southcom photographs, a $100 million offer with explicit regime change conditions attached. The CIA director landing in Havana. Cuba says, discussing, the first time in 67 years. And now the indictment of Raúl Castro. These are not isolated moves. They follow a single compression logic. Remove external lifelines, destroy internal revenue streams, delegitimize the government in international forums, open direct channels with the power structure, make an offer, then indict the founding family. That is not a pressure campaign. That is a prosecution timeline, not legal, strategic. Each action narrows the space. Each one makes the next step feel inevitable. You do not indict the patriarch of a regime you plan to negotiate with indefinitely. You indict him when you believe the regime is ending and you want the legal architecture in place for what comes after. If Cuba's government falls, the indictment establishes criminal precedent, provides transitional justice infrastructure, satisfies the exile community, and gives any successor government its first symbolic act, the repudiation of the Castro era. If the government survives, the indictment remains, a permanent legal cloud over every official who served under it, complicating every diplomatic engagement Cuba attempts for decades. Either outcome advances the objective. The architecture is designed to function regardless of the answer. We track every development in this story daily, because this situation is moving too fast for anything less. Every tool in this campaign has now been deployed. Every pressure point has been activated, and the next move, whether it comes from Havana, Washington, or somewhere neither of us is watching yet, could be the one that determines what Cuba becomes. When it happens, we will break it down exactly the way we did today. So if this gave you something the headlines did not, something real, something that reframes what you thought you already understood, then share this with one person who needs to see it. Drop your answer in the comments below. Is this justice or is it leverage? And does it matter if it is both? That question does not have a clean answer. The most important ones never do. If you have been following this Cuba story and you want analysis that goes deeper than the headline every single time, subscribe. Every update, every escalation, every move that the mainstream coverage misses, we will be here.